Hey, Pretty Girl Club, get your tea out and get your popcorn because this is gonna be a good one. I want to talk about how black femininity and colorism content creators don't want you to decenter men. You know why? Because then they can't sell you divestment courses for hundreds of dollars on how to attract a white man. Then they can't make content talking about social strategies to attract foreign black men. So I want to talk about this content creator who has been dominating the colorism conversation for about the past maybe 10 years or so. Okay, so let's give her props. Congratulations to content creators like Chrissy or Pink Pill. So let's talk about this though, because I've noticed that this content creator, she has called the decentering men movement extreme, or she has called certain parts of it extreme, but notice how she doesn't name any actual channels or any actual talking points that are extreme. Being LGBT is not extreme. That's not extremism or radical. There are some women who are going to be LGBT, and that's their business. Choosing to be child free. That is also not extreme. I mean, there are some women who don't want children. For the women who don't want marriage, I don't see how that is extreme. Some women want to remain single, or they just want to have a boyfriend, or they want to take a break from dating. Deleting dating apps and stuff. I don't see how any of those things are extreme. But I've noticed a pattern where a lot of the content creators who have been dominating the black femininity talking points over the past decade, or they've been dominating the colorism talking points, kind of profiting off of women's insecurities around men, a lot of those content creators don't want you to decenter men, or at least that's how it's coming off. It's as if a lot of them kind of want to discredit the talking points from those who choose to not center their lives around men because it affects their sales, it affects their businesses. They want you to watch their videos on how to be more feminine so you can attract a white man, or how to get this white man to embrace your natural hair and like you, and how to social climb amongst these different groups of men. And I feel like one thing that people don't talk about on YouTube is how the trends change. A lot of people have tried to critique my channel, and then they'll try to say things like, well, in 20 years, everybody's going to be mixed, and so then your channel's going to be irrelevant. Okay, well, then I will just talk about whatever's relevant for that time. I'm a content creator, not a content stagnator. But I've noticed that the women who sometimes lack creativity, or maybe they are used to only talking about things from one perspective, anytime they see a new trend that they did not start, then they become threatened by it. So this is kind of the vibe that I'm getting from this content creator, Chrissy. Yes, that's right. I'm not afraid to actually give names in my video, because I've noticed that one of the flaws of her content is she's actually extremely vague. She doesn't name names of what she's talking about. When she says that certain parts of decentering men are extreme, she doesn't name what's extreme. How is taking a break from dating extreme? So not having sex with men, that's extreme. People who are LGBT are extreme. People who choose not to have kids are extreme. Like, what exactly are you talking about? So I've noticed that sometimes the content creators who maybe they've kind of had their time, or they've had their heyday on YouTube, and they see that the movements that they have started are declining, then they get upset when they see newer content creators like myself kind of gaining thousands of subscribers. And it's funny because I don't actually see myself as the leader of any movement. I'm just a regular person online, just kind of making commentary. But I've noticed that some women are threatened because they don't want to lose their relevance. They don't want to lose their subscribers or the people that are like kind of buying from them, buying courses from them and stuff like that. I've noticed the same thing happening kind of in the divestment movement. I've noticed that sometimes even women in the divestment movement, they don't want you to decenter men because then they don't have as much of a platform anymore. They don't feel as powerful anymore. And I've noticed that some of these women have even resorted to extreme talking points, such as white men like unambiguous dark-skinned black women with 4C hair more than mixed women, when you know that that is statistically and categorically not true. If you look at history, white men are actually the creators of colorism, texturism, featureism, and racism. And they also were the ones who were enslaving those same unambiguous women with those facial features, skin tones, and hair textures. So to go out of your way and to somehow come up with these extreme talking points, now I don't know who came up with that sort of talking point, I'm just using it as an example, but the women who come up with these extreme talking points like that, like, oh, suddenly white men are going to be the least colorist and least racist, and they like you more than any other groups of women, I feel like sometimes people are doing this just so they can either sell you products or sell you books, or they're saying it because they want you to follow their YouTube channels or they want to maintain their relevance. And I don't think there's anything wrong with profiting off of your ideas or profiting off of YouTube. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to profit off of it, then just be specific with what you're talking about. So the question that I have for content creators such as Chrissy is, what talking points from the decentering men movement are radical and extreme? Please tell me what part of it is extreme. Celibacy, is that extreme? Because I've seen lots of people who come from religious backgrounds who remain celibate. Choosing to remain single, is that extreme? Choosing to leave an abusive relationship, is that extreme? Please tell me exactly which talking points are extreme, because I've noticed that sometimes these content creators, all they're doing is coming online and trying to discredit another space. Like, notice how on this channel, I don't discredit dark-skinned, unambiguous Black women having their own spaces. I actually support them having their own spaces, and because of that, I've created a channel for everyone that does not fit into the category of like a dark-skinned, unambiguous, mono Black woman. So I actually don't have a problem with other women having their exclusive spaces, but I have noticed that sometimes content creators can have almost like these secondary motives where if they feel like they are somehow losing relevance or losing prominence or maybe losing business, instead of pivoting their business and instead of kind of changing with the times, then they want to just come in and critique women who are actually leveling up. And by the way, I support women being feminine. That's totally fine, but I do not believe that femininity is a monolith. You can be feminine and decenter men. Look at Shira 7. She is feminine and she has decentered her husband. I don't think Shira 7 revolves her whole life around James. She is worried about getting her bags. She is making the best life that she can make for herself and her daughters. So I believe that femininity is not a monolith. But I've noticed that the women who base their femininity off of what a man thinks of them, those women are male-centered. And so if they see you decentering men, then they have lost their power because they can no longer shame women based on their relationship failures with men. So do you guys remember back when Cynthia G was on YouTube and she used to make fun of women and say she got the same Black man and kind of like making fun of women's relationship failures? If Cynthia G were to come back on YouTube today, she would be coming back to a different YouTube climate. You can't come back on YouTube and say, oh, you know, you're a failure because your relationship didn't work out. That's actually a very male-centered insult. So now that women are decentering men, we understand that lots of men are cheaters just in general. And so we're no longer ashamed of past breakups or like, you know, we're no longer ashamed of leaving abusive relationships. In fact, we celebrate women who leave abusive relationships or women who get out of situations that do not serve them. But I've noticed sometimes if a person feels threatened by you taking your power back, then they want to suddenly invalidate you or they want to invalidate what you're doing. And they'll say, you're being extreme. You're being too radical. How dare you not center your femininity around what a man thinks of you? How dare you not want to be a trad wife? How dare you become a modern woman or choose to be celibate or choose not to sleep with men? How dare you guys be LGBT? That's radical. And it's like, what part of putting yourself first and not revolving your life around a man is radical? But I want to go into some of these comments because these were very interesting. Oh, and by the way, I've noticed that Chrissy has officially announced that she will no longer be talking about colorism. I'm very glad to hear that. This person says, hey, Chrissy, I know you haven't been talking about colorism as much, but I wish you would address all of these new exotical channels popping up and speak on their white supremacist type attitudes and content. I think it's hilarious how they're calling it white supremacist. If I truly was a white supremacist channel, my channel wouldn't even be here. But she responded, she said, the exotical channels aren't new, love. I battled with them years ago in several videos and got dragged for it. It's someone else's turn. I've moved on. That's interesting that she says she got dragged for it. This person here says, I respectfully unsubscribe from this channel. If you understand what decenter men means, then you wouldn't say what you said. You have no stat to prove that the majority of women who participate in that movement have been hurt by men. You are doing a classic dividing tactic. Of course, with every movement, there's always radical people. And also, why should women be ashamed of loving a man and getting hurt by him? You know what I mean? Like, for the people who made fun of Danny Lay being abused and cheated on by that Black rapper guy, why are you shaming a woman who literally got abused? That's not funny to me. Like, I don't laugh and like shame women who get abused or say, oh my God, ha ha, that's what you get. You got the same black man. I didn't say that when unambiguous black women were coming on YouTube talking about black men being colorist to them. I didn't say, ha ha, you got the same black man. That's why he called you these colorist names. No, because I don't feel the need to like make fun of women's traumas or shame them for simply wanting to be loved, or, you know, for their relationship not working out or being divorced or for being LGBT or whatever. But let's look at Chrissy's response. She said, I specifically said the women who are at the head of the movement, meaning the most popular vocal platforms. So point fingers and name names, Chrissy. Who are the women who are the head of the movement and the most popular? Because in the video, it sounded like she was talking about myself and Princella the Queenmaker. So I don't even consider myself to be very popular. I literally have less than 20,000 subscribers. So first of all, I'm flattered. But who is she talking about? Notice how a lot of people who want to argue, they never have anything specific that they can bring up. This is so similar to the red pill guys who talk about how all women are hoes or whatever, but then they have nothing to actually back that up. She said, they are extremists and all fall in the categories I mentioned. Maybe you don't know who they are, but they are very loud and visible. If you are not on that side of the movement, then this video shouldn't offend you. There are no hard feelings about you unsubscribing. Thanks for listening. Someone said, I think she said the majority of women with the extreme views tended to be the ones hurt by men. First of all, let's talk about this here. Who has not been hurt by a man? Every person on this earth has been hurt by a man or a woman. You know why? Because humans are not perfect. So to imply that you have never been hurt by a man ever in your life, not only is that statistically impossible, but the black women empowerment space in particular talks about the colorism, texturism, and featureism perpetuated by black men. So therefore, you guys are contradicting yourselves because you have been hurt by men just like anybody else. And you should not be ashamed of that. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, oh, these people who talk about decentering men, they've just been hurt by men, as if that's something I should be ashamed of for simply being a human being who has had human experiences just like anybody else. I don't make fun of you guys and say, oh, you guys only talk about colorism because you've been hurt by men. No, I don't invalidate your entire experiences. You have the right to empower darker skinned, unambiguous black women, just like how when it comes to decentering men, women have the right to prioritize themselves and to keep themselves safe, emotionally and physically. This person says, Chrissy, why even talk on this subject? I think it's great if bad men and the so-called good silent men are running scared. Women are learning the game, and that's more important than defending. What exactly are you defending? Men are a huge problem with all the verbal, physical, and mental abuse women have been taking from them. This is like BB all over again. Just stand down. I don't know what BB is. But this person says, it's common sense that most women that decenter men have been hurt by men, hence why they do it. Now I can say she can explore and empathize more with why these women decenter men. But to be frank, the decenter men is a movement for women that have given up on love and given up on hope and can't secure a good man in this dark, selfish world. So I actually don't think that's what decentering men is. Decentering men, in my opinion, is just this chart here, where, you know, you just kind of put man, you don't center your life around that man. That's all it means. For some women, it will mean like you take him out of the circle altogether. So like he's not even in your life at all. But that's okay though. There's nothing wrong with women who choose to be single or they choose to take a break from men. That doesn't make them radical or extreme as if it's a negative thing. Like, oh, how dare you take a break from dating men? You've just been hurt by them. You need to try again. There are some women who choose not to be in relationships, and that is okay. So Chrissy said, the decenter men platforms have spoken on my content, so I am well within my right to speak on theirs. True. I did far more than they've done for me and mentioned everything good about the movement in this video. So I'm also allowed to critique it as they have done me. They aren't above reproach. Highlighting the problems within the movement isn't defending men. So what is the problem with decentering men? Chrissy, that's my question. Where is the problem? Like, what's the problem with women choosing to either be single or take a break from men or maybe be child-free, or some women who are LGBT? Like, tell me what the problems are with any of those things. Or being celibate? What's the problem with women doing any of those choices? What is the problem with women having free will over their dating lives or over their love lives, or choosing not to have one at all? What's the problem with women centering themselves and putting themselves first and not prioritizing a man's emotions or, his desires above her own? Please answer that. She said, also, this is nowhere near the same situation with BB, and she has her own shortcomings and has self-sabotaged as well. So I don't know who BB is. She said, I'm almost 10 years in now, so this ain't the same Chrissy. I have seen how the extremes can ruin a well-intended movement, and you have too. So take your own advice, stand down, and accept that there will be different opinions than yours, and they are just as necessary. Somebody else said, in a world with a reported 80% of women have been sexually abused by the time they turn 18, you'll be hard-pressed to find a woman who hasn't been traumatized by a man. Contradictory video, but expected when the status quo is being jolted. I think that's exactly what it is. I think that some of the Black femininity creators, such as Chrissy, she talks a lot about femininity. That's fine. But I think that femininity doesn't have to be a monolith. You can decenter men and still be feminine, but she seems to have a problem with this movement because it challenges some of her femininity talking points. And you know what? This is a part of what happens with a movement, hence why it's called a movement and it's not called being stagnant. And like I said, I don't even see this as a real movement. I mean, I see it as just women discussing things and sharing their experiences on the internet. She said, that has already been discussed on this channel. The last time I read the stats for girls and women in the US, it was 1 in 4 girls that were sexually abused before 18 and around 42% of women overall. So she's saying the majority of women have not been sexually abused by men. She said, of course, many have gone unreported and it's still a major issue that needs to be discussed, especially with the rise of incels. But statistically, there are many women who have not been abused by men and never will be. So my question for you is, what do you define as abuse? Because abuse is not just sexual. Abuse can be emotional. Neglect is actually a form of abuse. And we all know that when it comes to parenting, a lot of times women are the default parents. And so I actually do believe that a lot of fathers can be emotionally neglectful towards their children, which is also a form of abuse. And so even if this stat were true that only 1 in 4 girls were sexually abused, there are still many other forms of abuse. What about financial abuse? Like, there are so many other things that this comment here is not addressing. She said, I'm just a realist that does commentary based on facts rather than emotion. Nothing contradictory about what I said either. It's just a nuanced dialogue. Well, I do find it contradictory because, like I said, you did not mention what aspect of decentering men is extreme. Is it the celibacy that you think is extreme? Is it women being LGBT that you think is extreme? Is it women not getting married or being child-free that you think is extreme? Name the decentering men talking point that you find to be extreme. Someone said, dang, Chrissy, you did not nail this one. You're speaking of things you have no knowledge of. Married women are also decentering men. Exactly. Decentering men, it doesn't have to mean, oh, you have to be celibate or you have to turn into a nun. But she said, men are trying to work us into exhaustion. As a happily married woman, I can tell you that even the kindest of men will take advantage of women, take out their stress on women, blame women when things get rough, and think only of themselves at multiple points during the marriage. You have to keep on them to be better, and they often get angrier at first, then maybe they will walk it back later. It's exhausting, and it usually doesn't start out this way. Success for the woman and or having kids are often triggers. My husband makes way more than I do, but when I got close to catching up, he started to turn on me. So please don't be insulted when I say you don't have this topic down. But this time, please hear what these women are saying, even though your initial reaction is to disagree. It will save you so many headaches. Yeah, I think that Chrissy's reaction is to disagree because she makes male-centered content in a lot of her videos. I don't think all of them are male-centered, but I think a lot of them are. I think that the whole femininity talking points of some of these Black empowerment content creators are very like male-centered or based on a white man picking you, or based on a foreign Black man picking you, or based on, promotional marketing so that you can be seen as more desirable to men. And so if women are starting to decenter men's opinions altogether and decenter men's biases altogether, that could be very threatening to someone who has founded an entire YouTube channel or platform based on that. It doesn't have to be threatening. She could easily just change her content, but I've noticed that some people, they're too hard-headed. They don't want to change. I'm not accusing Chrissy of automatically doing this, but one thing that people try to critique about my channel is, oh, well, you seem to kind of like jump from one video to another one, or like you talk about exoticals, you talk about decentering men, you talk about light-skinned women, and it's like, yeah, because I get to talk about whatever I want. I am a content creator, not a content stagnator. So guess what? If 20 years from now everybody is mixed race, then I can talk about something else. I get to move on and develop and grow and change as the times move on, and whatever happens is something that I get to give my commentary on. But I've noticed that some people, they have more of a closed-minded way of thinking, to where they want to keep things the way they were because in the way that those things were, they felt more prominent or they felt more relevant. So you know how some people try to say that light-skinned black women only feel relevant around black men? Well, my channel challenges that, because this is actually a Decentering Men channel. And so I actually challenge that talking point that light-skinned women, all their confidence and self-esteem comes from men. All of their views on their own beauty come from men. I have a whole entire series on multiple sources of validation and how to meet your own internal beauty standard without needing a man to validate it. So a platform like mine would directly challenge a platform like Chrissy's. And that seems to be triggering her because of her views on femininity for black women. This channel actually talks about femininity as well, but I talk about it from a different perspective. I don't necessarily talk about femininity in relation to men. Like, I don't say that, oh, you're feminine because you wear makeup and you're cute. I tend to talk about femininity in more of a psychological or almost like a spiritual type of way. But I've noticed that on a lot of the black women empowerment channels and a lot of the black femininity channels, they talk about femininity in relation to divestment, or in relation to white men, or in relation to red pill men or black men or whatever. But she said, when did I say that married women aren't decentering men? I said right in the video that women can be partnered and also decenter men. I also stated that I take issue with the women who have radicalized the movement. So once again, who are the women who have radicalized decentering men? Point fingers and name names. Who is radical, Chrissy? What talking points are radical? What's radical about a woman putting herself first? What's radical about a woman being single or not wanting marriage at all? What's radical about that? What's radical about women being LGBT? What's radical about women deciding to only have casual sex and nothing more? What's radical about any of these things? She said, I agree with decentering men. So you agree with decentering men, but you disagree with the radical part of it, but then you won't talk about what the radical part actually is. And this is why people are questioning you, because you're being too vague. Everything else you wrote in your comment, I've already stated on this channel in multiple vids. You aren't providing any new information. I suggest you re-listen to the video and refrain from personalizing what was said so you can comprehend it better. Have a good day. So she got angry at her subscriber. But what do you ladies think? Do you think that putting yourself first is extreme? Do you think that taking a break from dating is extreme? Do you think that LGBT women are extreme? What do you think is extreme? Like, what's the problem with not making men the center of the circle like on this graph? Do you think that a lot of the former black femininity creators and black femininity divestment creators are threatened by the decentering men movement because it means that their businesses may decline or their channels and relevance may decline? What do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.